Hello and welcome to Pers TV News Analysis. I'm Kaveh Taqwi. In this news analysis, we're going to take a look at the most recent statements made by former White House correspondent Helen Thomas. The venue, the 8th Annual Images and Perceptions of Arab Americans, a workshop on anti-Arab bias, in which she was one of the speakers. Not only did she not back away from her earlier remarks about Israel, she took it a step further, saying Congress, the White House, and Hollywood and Wall Street are all owned by the Zionists. First, a look at this report.
Day after day, because that has great meaning in this country. You never answer it.
Well, I apparently don't answer it to your satisfaction.
That's right.
Helen Thomas was born on August 4, 1920 in the U.S. city of Winchester, Kentucky. Her parents were Arab immigrants from Tripoli in northern Lebanon. The 90-year-old Greek Orthodox Thomas started his career with United Press International as a correspondent, and later as White House bureau chief. After 57 years with UPI, she then worked as an opinion columnist for Hearst newspapers, where she worked from 2000 till her forced retirement on June 7, 2010. Thomas is well known for her press coverage of every U.S. president from the last years of the Eisenhower administration. She was the first female officer of the National Press Clubs. She was also the first member and president of the White House Press Corps. Thomas is the author of 5 books. Thomas's rewarding career came to an abrupt halt after she criticized Israel's occupation of Palestine.
Remember, these people are occupied, and it's their land. It's not German, it's not Poland.
So where should they go? What should they do?
They go home.
Since her remarks, Helen has been bombarded with the accusation of being an anti-Semitic by some U.S. media groups and pro-Israeli organizations.
Not just a question of treating Helen Thomas this way. Many people have been treated this way for daring to speak up and challenge, the conventional wisdom. And anybody who speaks up is often called an anti-Semite, or if you're Jewish like myself, you're called a self-hating Jew.
Thomas's ordeal and her sudden departure despite her credentials brings to light the depth of Israeli influence in Washington and the mainstream media in the U.S.
Well, I suspect that the American Jewish lobby, AIPAC, was behind it. I'm sure there were words coming from Israeli sources, and I think it was atrocious to have her kicked off the press corps.
All the pressure and accusations have not stopped Thomas from expressing her thoughts. Just last week, she made comments about what she said was the Zionist control of American institutions. The morning after her remarks, the pro-Israel Anti-Defamation League blasted her comments as anti-Semitic and called on journalism schools and other groups to rescind honors that recognized Thomas. Shortly after, the U.S. Wayne University decided to end an annual diversity award in her name.
There are a lot of people who just want to have a one-sided discussion about the Middle East. They're pro-Israeli or they're pro-right-wing Israeli, and they want to silence anybody with another point of view, even Jews.
Okay, to open up this discussion, we're joined with the following guests. President of the International Foreign Policy Center, Eugene Bird, joins us from Washington. Author and political commentator, Carol Gould, who joins us from London. And President of the Council for National Interest, Alison Weir, who joins us on the phone from Sacramento in California. Thank you, all our guests, for joining us. First, I want to go to Carol Gould. Carol Gould, how would you balance the latest statements that were made by Helen Thomas?
Well, I think it's a great tragedy that this amazing lady, whom I've admired all my life and looked up to myself as a journalist, has to come to this ignominious end because of what I frankly regard as rather ridiculous comments that she has made, particularly last week, because she said that the media are run by Zionists who are anti-Arab. Well, when President Ahmadinejad was in New York recently, every television network hosted him graciously. He was on Larry King for an hour. He was on with Andrea Mitchell on NBC for an hour. He was on with Christiane Amanpour on CNN. And he was even on with Charlie Rose on Bloomberg. Every network invited him, and there was no feeling of anti-Iranian or anti-Arab amongst the networks. Also, I have to laugh that Mrs. Thomas, Helen Thomas, was employed by Hearst, Now, is that a Jewish organization? What about McClatchy newspapers? What about Rupert Murdoch? What about Ted Turner? What about Fremantle Media, which is a big media organization now around the world, one of whose directors is Simon Cowell? I mean, this is just, it's ridiculous. I mean,
Okay.
if you talk about Gannett newspapers, I could give you a long list of media organizations who haven't got one Jewish person involved with them.
Okay.
If Wall Street's run by Jews, why didn't they save Lehman Brothers? Lehman Brothers was allowed to collapse.
Well, let me
So
let me
if
get a
the Jews
reaction
run
to
Wall
you.
Street, somebody would have saved Lehman Brothers.
Let me get a reaction to you, Eugene Bird.
Well, I've known Helen Thomas for more than 20 years, and I was Department of State correspondent for the Washington Report and used to go over to the White House. And I think she was the one reporter who was always called on first, of course, because she was the senior one. And she always spoke truth to power. And in a sense, her comments concerning they ought to go back to where they came from, you know, there are a lot of them that have gone back from Israel, and we have almost 800,000 Israeli American citizens who have dual citizenship, most of them living here in the United States. So it's a very complex population figure, and I think Helen Thomas, I was at her memorial dinner the other night, and the number of people that came out for her, Paul Findley, Senator Abarisk, various other people, I think proves that she has a strong group of supporters. And there are, of course, a lot of people who will agree with her so far as the influence of Israel and the 5 lobbies of Israel in the United States. It's not just AIPAC, it's ADC, and it's the Christian Zionist evangelical right-wing community. So in a way, she's still speaking truth to power, even though she's not in the White House.